Hello everyone, my name is Katie and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about how I became a metalhead. So as you know, if you've seen my channel, I'm very much into heavy metal and all the different metal subgenres and rock music, and people always ask me how I got into it. A lot of people assume maybe I had a parent that introduced me to this music, and a lot of people always ask when I got into heavy music and how, and I thought it would be cool to make a video that's a timeline of all the different genres I've liked over the years since I was 5 years old to now at 27 years old. I think it'll be fun to reflect on how I truly went through the metal pipeline and ended up where I am now. Music is one of those things that I'm just so passionate about, and I love hearing other people's stories of how they got into the music scene, and metal is just one of those things that has always meant so much to me, and I really want to talk about what it's meant throughout different periods of my life. So let's get into the list of how I became a metalhead. So for me, the metal pipeline started with rock music, specifically radio rock music. I feel like this is the case with a lot of people. I remember being, let's say maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I used to hear System of a Down on the radio. Everybody's going to the party, have a real good time. The reason why is I had an older sibling that was a teenager at the time, and she always had the rock stations playing, and I was hearing a lot of the stuff that was popular around like 2001, 2002. So I was hearing System of a Down Toxicity album, and BYOB was one of my first rock songs I can really think of. Is that a rock song or a metal song? I'm not even really sure. But that was one of the first songs I can really think of that I loved as a kid. That was like my song. I was like, I had never heard music like that up to this point. You know, before that it was the Barney theme song and Mr. Rogers and different things like that. You know, I didn't, and church music. I grew up going to church a lot, but I had never heard anything like this. And I remember being obsessed with BYOB. And I would change up the lyrics. I thought the everybody going to the party or whatever those lyrics were. When as a kid I was so silly, I would change it to potty instead of party. And you know, they mention a tablecloth in that song, I would call it the tablecloth song. It's just funny, like I've had it in my blood and in my bones since I was a very little kid. But yeah, I just listened to a lot of rock radio. Like I said, up until I remember being about, I want to say 8 years old. It was around 2005. I remember spending a lot of my summer watching MTV2. And this was back when MTV2 would play a lot of music videos, and rock music was a little bit more of a popular thing in that era. It was definitely more mainstream. We had stuff like TRL where they showcased a lot of popular rock and kind of metal bands. And I remember that summer seeing Avenged Sevenfold music videos. I want to say it was Backcountry. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. It was like nothing I'd heard before. I thought bands like System of a Down were crazy and different. No, something about Avenged Sevenfold sparked something in me even more. And I remember seeing My Chemical Romance, the Helena, I think that's how you say that, that music video. And oh my gosh, so many different things. And I really, that was like when I was a little bit older and more conscious of things and started to really want to buy CDs. And I remember for Christmas that year I asked for CDs, and I think the CDs that I got, I know for sure I got the Welcome to the Black Parade, My Chemical Romance. I'm gonna go grab it actually. I still have my very first rock CD. Here it is in all its glory. It's missing the front part of the case. It's pretty scratched up. I have a really funny story about this. Let's see what the disc looks like. You know, every now and then I still pop it in there, but it's a little musty looking. I need to be careful because this is from, like I said, 2005. And this same year, I think I got a couple other CDs. Like I got System of a Down, Mesmerized and Hypnotized double album. It was like 2 CDs that fit together and completed the artwork. It was so cool. If you know, you know. It's kind of hard to explain. And I think that same year I got like a Fall Out Boy CD. But System of a Down and My Chemical Romance were my 2 big bands. Like I said, I did like Avenged Sevenfold a lot. But maybe my parents were a little bit more iffy on letting me listen to them at that time. I'm not really sure because my parents were not into this music at all. If anything, they were kind of like anti-rock and metal. You know what I mean? I do need to tell the quick story about this. So this CD came with a really cool poster of like the Black Parade setting, and I loved the visuals for this album. But I remember in like 6th grade, I found out that this guy I had a crush on really liked My Chemical Romance. He used to wear their shirts all the time. And stupid little me gave this boy my poster. And I'll always regret that because I want it back so bad. Anyway. I've always been a lover girl at heart, what can I say? So like I said, 2005, 8 years old, listening to a lot of radio rock stuff, and then I kind of did this for a few years, and then I remember around the time I was 12 years old, I was in 6th grade, I got this little MP3 player, and it was the kind, I actually have it, I'll show you guys, it was the kind that you could listen to the radio on, and you could record stuff from the radio with it. So this is when I started exploring radio a little bit more myself. Instead of listening to whatever my siblings play in the car, I was able to go to the classic rock stations. And it's weird, I didn't even know this stuff existed. I thought the more modern rock at the time was all that rock music was, and this is when I discovered a whole new world and fell deeper into the rock music rabbit hole than ever before. I was finding bands like AC/DC, Rat, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, a lot of like the hair bands or just the classic stuff. Van Halen, oh my gosh, Ozzy Osbourne. I listened to Ozzy Osbourne before Black Sabbath, if that tells you anything. I did everything all out of order, but this radio station I listened to used to play all the classics, all the hair bands, all the good 80s stuff. I fell in love with this sound, and I remember I wanted to start playing the guitar because of all the cool guitar work that was in all of this stuff, and I was never really encouraged to do that when I was younger, which is one of the reasons I want to so bad now. I started playing at 25, and I'm so glad I finally did, but I just remember looking back, like, I wish someone would have taken how passionate I was about music seriously and encouraged me to start. But anyways, up to this point, everything was mostly rock, hard rock, maybe teetering the lines of metal a little bit. But it all changed one day. I remember specifically having my MP3 player in hand, listening to the radio, and this just badass song comes on. It's like kind of slow, menacing. There's a bell chiming in the background. It's not Hell's Bells by AC/DC. It's For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica. And I have the exact moment I heard Metallica for the first time ever recorded on this MP3 player. I'll play the file for you right now.
Guys, keep listening. Later today, we're going to be giving away some NOS Energy Drink prize packs. NOS Energy Drink does for drivers what nitrous oxide systems do for the car.
Plus, test your Guitar Hero skills with an interactive Guitar Hero kiosk at the store and register to win great prizes.
I thought this song was so cool, I had to have it recorded. I used to do that every time I heard a song I really liked. I would press record and listen to it later, and that was so fun. This was before I ever used LimeWire or burnt CDs or anything like that. This was all I had. So I was blown away. I had never heard anything this menacing and badass, and it gave me a feeling that I've felt many times since then, but it's just like that first time I'll always remember being like, whoa, this is different. So this is the MP3 player. I can't believe this was before I ever had an iPod or anything. At this time, I think it was like 2008 or 9, something like that. iPods were coming out. It was like the iPod Nano and the iPod Shuffle and all of that, and I remember wanting one so bad, but this was all I had. But little did I know, this little cheap thing that I didn't appreciate would change the trajectory of my life in a big way, and would take me down a path that really helped me throughout my childhood and teenage years. And it just seems so silly and dramatic, but this little thing, in a lot of ways, saved my life many times. I'm out of breath because I was searching for this thing in my room for so long. But I recently recovered this like a couple years ago. I hadn't seen it for years. It had got buried in my stuff throughout the years of moving and all that. And I thought it was ruined. It had some rust on it and some battery acid. It was like far gone. And I cleaned off the connectors here and ended up getting it working, and I was able to get the files on my computer from it, so I have all the things that I thought were cool enough to record at the time from this MP3 player. So it's really like I have my 12th year of life all recorded on here. It means so much to me. It's weird how vividly I remember this first moment. I remember it was like 6 a.m. It was still dark outside. I was getting off the bus and walking into my school, and we weren't allowed to have our MP3 players at school, so I was like trying to stuff it in my hoodie pocket and turn it off, and that's when this song came on, and I was like, dude, I have to record this until I walk into the school and get into the classroom. I have to make sure I have as much of this song as possible on my MP3 player. And I remember hiding it in my hoodie pocket until I got into class, and I got the song recorded. I don't think I got the whole song. I'll have to listen again, but it's so weirdly vivid, that moment. First time hearing Metallica. How cool is that? So I spent a few years listening to, like I said, all these hair bands, and then Metallica was a big thing. And then I figured out this radio station had a Metallica hour every Saturday night where they would play like a bunch of Metallica songs. A lot of Black Album stuff, and as well as For Whom the Bell Tolls. And it's weird, they didn't really play a lot of Metallica's thrash stuff. That wasn't really a thing on that radio station. So it wasn't until a few years later, I want to say around the time I was 14 probably, this is when I got my hands on the internet and I actually was able to go look up songs on YouTube and all of this stuff. And I remember looking up bands like Metallica and being so shocked. There was this whole world of thrash music, and it was way heavier than what I had heard. And it's funny, at the time, I didn't really care for Kill 'Em All that much. It grew on me so much over the years, but as a teenager, I was like, this is lame. But surprisingly, this did snowball into me listening to other thrash metal bands. At the time, Megadeth became a really big favorite. Of course, I feel like it's a natural pipeline to be a Metallica fan and then a Megadeth fan, because you hear about the Dave Mustaine getting kicked out story and all of that, and that was my first time learning about all of that, and I really liked Dave Mustaine for a long time. So the thrash metal and then the Pantera sort of led me into heavier stuff. I really liked the harsh vocals with Phil. That was kind of the first time I had ever heard anything like that. And this led me into a path of death metal. I found some of the older death metal bands like Obituary, Morbid Angel, Carcass, Death. Oh my god, guys, when I found Death, like nothing I had ever heard. It was this heavy, super aggressive death metal, but it had a lot of melody. And at that time, I had never heard the two cross. I really loved the melody from my hair metal days. I'm a sucker for melody. Any song that has good melody, no matter what the genre, that's my thing. And when I discovered that could be a thing in death metal, holy cow. This led me into actual mellow death, and a big favorite of mine for a really long time was Arch Enemy. And I remember becoming a fan around the time Alyssa joined and was in love with Arch Enemy. Around the time I was 16, 17 years old, I was really wanting a mix of heavy music and softer music. And luckily for me, something that was really popular at the time within the sort of metal scene was metalcore. Okay, we had bands like Killswitch Engage, Avenged Sevenfold, which they had been a favorite of mine for so long, but something clicked around the time I was 16 that they became my absolute favorite band. I was a diehard Avenged Sevenfold fan. Like I was saying, I'm getting a death bat tattoo when I turn 18. I knew every single song front to back, knew every lyric, everything. Ended up seeing them live 6 times throughout the next couple of years, and God, I was a diehard. But I really liked metalcore. I remember Asking Alexandria was really big at the time, and Crown the Empire, a lot of bands like that. I liked that they sort of mixed the softer elements of music, and then they would have like the harsh vocals too. You know, you would have some pop influence, you would have hardcore breakdowns, which I didn't really understand at the time, but I didn't understand the concept of hardcore. I had never even heard anything like that at this point, but I just loved the breakdowns, loved that it was a little bit metal. It just had a lot going on, and I had a lot of fun with metalcore for a couple of years. And of course, I started listening to metalcore, and then, you know, searching on the internet, getting all the recommended bands, I started leaning into deathcore. I remember Suicide Silence was really big at the time. As well as Chelsea Grin and the Acacia Strain. Oh my gosh, one of my friends found an Acacia Strain CD in a dumpster. It was that friend that liked Pantera a lot. He was like, you want to borrow this? I found this. And I did. It was like the album was titled something about Wormwood or something. I can't remember. But that was like my first time really hearing deathcore, and that was really cool. I really liked that it was heavier. I noticed as I got older, I kept wanting heavier and heavier. I feel like metal is like a drug. You always want it to be a little heavier and you build up a tolerance to it. Not so much anymore. Like I like to listen to softer stuff sometimes too and balance it out. But when I was first going on my journey of listening to new things, I kept wanting heavier. That same friend that gave me the Acacia Strain CD was always wearing like dying fetus shirts and Cannibal Corpse butchered at birth shirts. And I was so intrigued by it, but also scared. Like I said, I was only like 16 probably. And I grew up in the Bible Belt. I was just afraid of everything in life, even things that aren't that serious. You know, at that time I was just such a big baby. So, but something about this like gross imagery intrigued my interest, and I went and looked it up online, started listening to it. I remember I didn't really like it at the time. I liked other old school death metal, like I said, but the more brutal death metal I wasn't really into. I never really got it until like way later in life. So at this point, I want to say I'm 17, 18 years old. I had pretty much listened to all the main metal subgenres and liked all of them. You know, I went through like a very natural journey. There were some things I hadn't heard yet, but around the time I was 18, I'm not going to get into super specific details, but I went through very traumatic, hard times. Very, very hard times. And it's weird, I went through like a 5 or 6 year period going into my adulthood where I didn't really listen to music anymore. Of course I did a little bit here and there. I didn't completely lock it out of my brain, but I wasn't really discovering new stuff all that much. There was only a couple bands here and there throughout the years that I liked a lot. Like I remember Slipknot's The Gray Chapter came out, and that was one of the last albums I really, really got into and had a big moment with before I was kind of done with music for a while. And I had new career paths taking over and things were getting very busy in my life, and I didn't really make time for my passion of music anymore, and it was very sad. I really did have a hole in my heart, a music-shaped hole in my heart. Not just metal, but all of it. It all had kind of just faded away. And I still listen to some old favorites here and there, but like I said, just wasn't discovering anything new and didn't have that same like drive to find new bands and go to shows. And all these things I really liked doing in my teenage years just kind of went away for a while. I want to say from like 2015 to 2020, I didn't find any new favorite bands at all until Ghost came around. I've recently told this story on my last video, so I won't go into super specifics, but during COVID times, I discovered Ghost, and I thought their music was so fun and a breath of fresh air. And man, it was like, it felt nostalgic and new all at once. It felt like nothing I'd ever heard, but it also felt like an old friend. And a lot of their stuff reminded me of the old hair music I used to listen to. That's just always going to be special to me because it was one of my first big genres I got into. So, and they had this weird, scary vibe to them too. They were kind of silly and satirical, and oh my gosh, so much fun. So Ghost was like one of the bands that really sparked my interest in rock and metal music again. And then I remember about a year later, I discovered Greta Van Fleet, and they're a rock band. It was weird. I kind of hadn't listened to much rock music anymore. It was mostly metal, but they sparked something in me. And to cut things short, Jake Kiska, the guitarist, made me want to start playing the guitar. And I ended up getting an SG to look like his. I started playing myself, and the gears started turning again. This is when I really got into music again, specifically rock music and then metal music all over again. It was like the spark I felt at 8 years old hearing System of a Down just got reignited all over again. And I would do these deep dives on Greta Van Fleet, and then this would get me back into other favorites. I started doing another dive back into Metallica, and then back into Megadeth, and then I would visit thrash metal again and death metal again. It's like this whole pipeline I went down, I restarted at the age of like 24 maybe. I really wanted to learn the guitar, and I wanted to learn it fast, so I was listening to all my old favorite songs that I always wished I could play on guitar, and I started actually learning them, and I was shocked that I was able to do that. And just this gave me back that passion and that drive to listen to music, and I wanted to just have it around all the time. I wanted to have music playing all the time. It was all I thought about. And as I was learning to play the guitar, I realized I want to document this. I wanted to make like a video diary of me learning how to play. So I started a TikTok account, and it was going to be just me posting progress videos of the guitar, and God, they're so rough to watch, guys. They're so rough to watch. Okay. They're really, really bad. But I really wanted to showcase this, and this turned into me just eventually just talking about music, new releases that came out. I would make tier lists of my favorite songs and bands, and all of this love for music just came back and spiraled into a pretty big thing. I was posting on TikTok all the time. I was gaining a following there. It was really fun. And then I went to this YouTube channel and did the same thing. You know, I really wanted a place to talk about music in a longer format. So I did that, and just turning my love for music into something productive to do. Like, I can sit here and talk to people and find other people who like the things I do. That just feels so special to me. And like I said, I am deeper into metal than ever before, and I'm a lot more mature now, so I feel like I understand things differently than I used to. I think of things a little bit more artistically than before. Don't get me wrong, I still listen to really silly stuff, but I don't know, I just feel like I had a more refined palette now, and I listen to a way bigger variety of music and a way bigger variety of subgenres of metal. Like now, like I said, I kind of capped off at the brutal death metal stuff when I was a teenager. Now I dug more into that stuff and discovered slam metal. I really like slam metal now. I think that's my favorite genre of death metal other than old school. I'm always an old school fan. Death is my favorite death metal band. Like, I'm always going to be into that. I love Obituary. Oh my God. But I started giving more brutal stuff more of a chance. I learned about death grind and grindcore and those genres, and then I started listening to more black metal. You know, for a long time I didn't really like black metal. I remember listening to first wave black metal like Merciful Fate, King Diamond, Venom, those kinds of bands, you know, way back in the day when I was listening to like thrash and death metal. But I never really liked much super extreme black metal bands like Mayhem and Emperor and Dark Throne and all of those. It took me a few years to really get into those, but I'm glad I gave them a chance. I do still not listen to it that much unless it's a little bit more atmospheric. I can't really get into Mayhem except for that one Death Crush EP they have. That's about it. Over the years, I've seen countless bands live. I've been to many music festivals, and I've had like a bucket list of bands I wanted to see that I did, and I've found so many friends online from talking about my interest in music, and man, I really do enjoy kind of making my life about it. This is all I really like at the moment. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm also a gamer, I'm a big horror nerd, I like other things, but music, specifically metal, has made me feel a way nothing else has ever made me feel. For me, I had a very tough childhood. There was a lot of things going on at home that I really needed to just shut out. And I feel like music was my escape. I hear a lot of people say this, and it really is that way. It was that one thing I could focus on that wasn't at home. You know, it felt like it was out there, and I was journeying out and listening to this music. And I really think it helped me survive through a lot of my rough years, especially those teen years, the early adult years. You know, I'm really not sure where I would be without this super hard focus on metal, but I can say I'm grateful. I feel like it's gotten me through the hardest times of my life, and it's weird. I went through that period of time not listening to anything, and then it sort of just came back to me like an old friend, and it's always been there for me. And this is why I love music so much. It's my favorite art form, and metal just has something that other genres don't. It has so much emotion. I feel like it's way more emotional than people always let on. It's not just about the headbanging and the badassery, even though that's really fun. It's just such a vulnerable genre. It's people screaming their hearts out, getting their feelings out, you know. It's very poetic. And sometimes you do just want to bang your head, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I just love it. It's the most fun genre, and it has the most feeling in it. You feel the most passion, and let's not forget the talent it takes to actually play the music. It takes so much speed and stamina and skill, and you can just feel through the talent and the passion the musicians have, it rubs off on the listener. You know, I just don't feel that in other genres very often. So to cut the story short, I've been on a musical journey with rock and metal music pretty much my entire life, the whole time I've been conscious. And like I said before, I wasn't really influenced by like a parent or anything. My older sister really did help me sort of start listening to radio rock. You know, being a teenager in the early 2000s was a time, you know, everything she liked kind of trickled down onto me. It's funny looking back because she didn't even really stay in this rock music. She went on to listen to rap music, and that was her thing. It's weird how she was my first impression on it, but I kind of went down this pipeline on my own. And so she was the first influence, and then I would say just radio and music videos, MTV, VH1, that used to be a big thing. They would just show you all these music videos, and then of course the internet. So who knows where I would be without all this media. And the times I was getting into things, I'm just lucky it was a little bit more popular. But either way, I'm very thankful for that spark being ignited initially, and music has changed my life, and I'll be a metalhead for the rest of my life. No doubt. Literally no doubt. Alright, so that's the story of how I became a metalhead. You guys can tell me your stories down below. Tell me that first thing that sparked the flame and the love for metal. I really want to know how other people became metalheads and if it was a similar journey to mine or completely different. But anyways, this video was so much fun to make, and I'm gonna wrap it up right here. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!